This isn't really a video I expected to make, but it is one I decided that would be worth my time to make nevertheless. And I'm going to attempt to explain and show you how to get a used fish tank to be essentially equivalently brand spanking new, or at least functionally so. As you can see, I've got a fish tank in my oven, and on first glance that sounds like a horrible idea, but trust me, it's not what you think. So, how do we get a used fish tank to look brand new and functionally speaking be brand new? Well, in Illinois we have a lot of calcium in the water. I've got a private well, and calcium buildup happens on glass. Now, we're going to talk about that, and just to show you that no extreme heat's going on in here, I can touch everything with my hand perfectly fine here. Glass is nice and clean for the most part, and I've already taken care of this, but if you want to get any sort of glass super squeaky clean, all you really need is a fresh sponge and some white vinegar. Pour a tiny bit of white vinegar on the sponge and then wipe the inside of the tank's glass where all the calcium is. The chemical reaction between the calcium and the vinegar will remove the calcium like that, at which point you just wash off the sides with a hose, fill it all the way up, and drain it out. Now that leaves us with a tank with some sand in here, and I want to be able to clean the sand. Not just clean it, but sanitize it. Which means we got to use the oven. Sorry for that beeping. The oven's getting mad at me because the door is open. And I'll explain why it's in the oven. So, let me just turn the light on here. Sand is a particularly big pain in the butt to remove, at least all of it, from a fish tank when it's wet. How do you get it to not be wet? You make a super arid environment. So what I've done is I've set my range to the dehydrate mode at 105 degrees. Now, that is not enough to melt the plastic, to thermal shock the glass, or to really damage any of the components of the fish tank. And in fact, I've got this little meter in here that tells me the temperature and the humidity, and it reaches up to 115 degrees Fahrenheit in there in reality. It's been in here for many hours now, and you might be wondering, okay, so what's so important? Why do I need to remove the sand? Well, to get this thing essentially brand new, we have to disinfect it, which means we got to boil it, which means we got to get it out of there. This is just an easy way of removing the sand, because when sand is dry, you can pour it all out. It's very easy to remove. When it's wet, it clumps up, it sticks to the glass. It's just easier to do this. And that's why it's in the oven. And like I said, doesn't harm the tank whatsoever. After it's done, we'll take the sand and put it in a pan. Now, it's going to be a bigger pan than that, but it's going to be one that works on my portable induction cooker right there, that black rectangle. Because then I bring that induction cooker outside and I boil the sand for 10-15 minutes. And at that temperature, it should kill anything, because the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. That's a very good temperature for killing most things. Now, once the sand is boiled, I will put it back in the tank. But you don't just, throw it back in. No. There's dead snails and stuff in there. Who knows? Maybe their carcasses are still in the shell. You don't want that. That's just going to create unnecessary amounts of ammonia. So what you do is you get a little sifter or grates or some sort of colander, what have you. Basically something that has this wire mesh. This is what I use. I put the sand in here, and when the sand is dry, it works so much easier. And you just shake it. The sand is small enough to fit through the wire mesh, but things like snail shells are not. So when you put the sand back in, you sift it, you get just sand. So now you've got a tank that's been cleaned with vinegar, and hopefully that's killed any snail eggs in the process, but you can't be entirely sure. You've disinfected the sand. You've also removed any foreign substances from the sand, and hopefully at that point you will have a brand new tank, functionally speaking. Now, this is the first time I've done it like this, and I've left it in here for many hours to prove that it does in fact work. That being said, this is not something I would attempt on an older range, something that you don't have the capability of setting specific parameters for, like the dehydrate option at a very low temperature. If you don't have something to measure the humidity and temperature inside like I do, it's also not advised because you won't be sure what the true temperature is. Yeah, you can break the glass by heating it up too fast, but luckily, 100 to 110 degrees, that's actually a realistic temperature of what you might go outside one day and feel. So if it can handle that, it can handle this. This is just a more controlled environment. The arid nature of the oven here in the dehydrate mode just sucks up moisture and it'll make the sand nice and dry. So that's just a basic overview about how we go about cleaning out a tank and making it functionally new. And I say functionally because aesthetically it's never going to look perfectly brand new. I'm sure there's various little things here and there that you can nitpick, but functionality is more important than aesthetics when it comes to keeping your little buddies alive. So that is how we begin with the tank. For the filter, it's a little different, but we'll get to that another day. This is what I've been doing today, and hopefully this is enough to deal with that pest snail problem.